Hello and welcome to Nice and Blunt. It's time to finish up my rankings for the week, so I'm going to talk quarterback, tight end, and defensive streamers for week 14. If you're looking for running back or wide receiver rankings, I'll have those available up here, but let's start off with quarterback at number 1. I have Aaron Rodgers versus Chicago. It's a primetime game. He's coming off a bye, and he owns the Chicago Bears. He's probably going to put up 30 plus points in this one. I feel very confident with Aaron Rodgers this week. At number 2, I got Patrick Mahomes versus Las Vegas. A few weeks ago, the Chiefs put up 41 on the Raiders, and I think they have a chance to do that again. Patrick Mahomes is going to have a ceiling game. At number 3, Kyler Murray, who put up 30 fantasy points last week. Even though the Rams are technically a bad matchup, I wouldn't be worried about it. It's also a primetime game on Monday night, and you should not bench Kyler Murray. My concerns about him after the injury were overblown, and he definitely looked healthy and like himself last week. So I'm not worried about Kyler Murray going forward. He's going to stay in the top 5 every single week. At number 4, I got Justin Herbert versus the Giants, and I'm assuming that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams suit up for this game. If that's the case, then I think Justin Herbert's going to put up a great game once again, and he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. But without them, I still think he'd be in my top 7. I wouldn't bring him down too much. He's still very talented. At number 5, though, I got Tom Brady versus Buffalo. And this is the first game where I'm a little bit concerned about the matchup, but I still think that there's shootout potential written all over this game. So I prefer Tom Brady over Josh Allen at number 6 here because I think that the Buccaneers will win the game. I think the Bucs defense may limit Josh Allen a little bit. And even though he's definitely a must start, you want him in your lineup, I would prefer Tom Brady just a little bit over Josh Allen. At number 7, though, I got Lamar Jackson at Cleveland. And 2 weeks ago when they played each other, everyone was really hyped on Lamar Jackson, and he threw 4 interceptions. So there's a risk that he's held in check again. I don't think he's going to throw 4 picks, but I don't think that they put up too many points is going to be a contentious, low-scoring game like it was a couple weeks ago. But still, he's definitely a starter. I don't think you can ever really justify benching Lamar Jackson. At number 8, though, I have Dak Prescott at Washington, and this has been a good matchup for opposing quarterbacks all season long. They've been terrible against the pass, and I think Dak is going to be leaned on a little bit more because the running backs are banged up. Zeke isn't 100%, and even though he's going to play, we're not really sure about Tony Pollard's status. He's definitely not 100%. He hurt himself on that long touchdown run last week. So I think they're going to throw a little bit more, and that's why I trust Dak's floor. I have him at number 8. At number 9, I have Matthew Stafford at Arizona, and I'm a little bit concerned. Sometimes Matthew Stafford really relies on those big plays, and even though I think this game could turn into a shootout, he could finish much higher than this. I think that the Arizona Cardinals defense is going to show up and force a couple of picks, and Matthew Stafford may have a down game. So that's why I have him lower than usual, but still, he's definitely a top 10 quarterback. At number 10, though, I got Russell Wilson at Houston. I'm not fully ready to commit to Russell Wilson once again. I don't think he's quite fully back, but this is a decent matchup. I don't think Houston can really stop him. But I still don't trust DK Metcalf. They don't have a run game, and Russell Wilson almost never throws for 300 yards. So that's my concern. That's why I'm not really willing to rank him any higher, but he's definitely back to being a starting quarterback. And number 11, I had Kirk Cousins, and that looks to have paid off thanks to that deep touchdown to KJ Osborne, but he did throw a couple of picks in this game, so he didn't have the biggest ceiling for Kirk Cousins this week. And number 12, Joe Burrow versus San Francisco. And I think he'll have a decent game, but I think they're going to lean on the run once again, and Joe Mixon will get into the end zone, and that may limit the touchdowns through the air. At number 13, I got Taylor Heineke, who could find himself in a shootout versus Dallas. At the very least, they're going to be in catch-up mode and throw a lot in the second half. I think Taylor Heineke has some upside this week. At number 14, I like Cam Newton's upside a lot versus Atlanta. This is a great matchup for quarterbacks, and you know that Cam Newton gets a lot of yards with his legs. So those are sometimes quadruple the fantasy points depending on your scoring. So I think he has a great floor this week. He's my quarterback 14. And right behind him is Taysom Hill at the Jets, who also has a great matchup. They are terrible against the run, and you know Taysom Hill is going to get some of those stats. So I like both of their floors. I think they're definite plays in every 2 quarterback league. But just streamers, I don't think they have the most upside. And I'm worried about Taysom Hill a little bit more because I think Alvin Kamara could just dominate on the ground. He's been practicing fully this week, and I think he's going to be 100% good to go. At number 16, I had Ben Roethlisberger, and if you're in a two-quarterback format and you weren't sure whether or not to start him, hopefully you saw my video on the Thursday Night Football start or sit decisions. If you missed that video and you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that button now, and you won't miss out next time. At number 17, though, Teddy Bridgewater versus Detroit, and he has a good matchup, but I think they're going to lean a little bit too much on the run for me to believe in the upside for Teddy. I do think that Jerry Jeudy has a decent game in this one, and that will benefit Teddy Bridgewater's fantasy stats. He's going to have a good floor. Ryan Tannehill could have a great game, could have a terrible game. I don't know, and I don't trust him. A.J. Brown is still on IR, so there's very few weapons for him, and I think they're going to run the ball a little bit more. So I don't really trust Ryan Tannehill until he has a fully healthy bevy of weapons. At number 19, though, Jimmy Garoppolo at Cincinnati, and he's a bit of a floor play. I'm not sure Deebo Samuel suits up, and he's been more involved in the run game, and that's kind of been hurting Jimmy Garoppolo's stats. I don't know if he can connect with George Kittle for 2 touchdowns again. So that's why I view Jimmy Garoppolo as more of a floor play, a low-end quarterback too. At number 20, Derek Carr, who I think has a terrible matchup. I don't want to start him, but you could definitely do worse. Kansas City has just been lights out recently. They've held their opponents to less than 20 points in the last 2 months, and I don't think Derek Carr is going to have much upside, especially without Darren Waller in this one. Outside the top 20, though, I'll just run through them. Tyrod Taylor at 21, Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Andy Dalton, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Mike Glennon round out my top 28. So let's move on to tight end. And at number 1, obviously, it's Travis Kelce versus Las Vegas. You're not going to bench him. He's a stud. At number 2, though, Rob Gronkowski versus Buffalo. I'm not worried about this matchup. Gronk has been an integral piece of the Bucs offense, and he's going to get plenty of targets. You can't bench him. You just can't. At number 3, George Kittle at Cincinnati. I don't think he'll score 2 touchdowns again, and probably won't go over 100 yards in this one. That's kind of rare for him. So you're obviously not going to bench him, but that's why I only have him at number 3, coming off a monster game last week. Number 4, Mark Andrews, always a top 5 tight end. Darren Waller would be at 5, but it's not looking good. I'm not sure that he suits up, but if he does, he's definitely a must start. After him, though, TJ Hawkinson is where it starts to get a bit risky. You trust the volume, but sometimes the upside isn't there, and this is going to be a tough matchup. So you kind of just have to start him based on where you drafted him. And number 7, Tyler Conklin versus Pittsburgh. I thought he'd have a decent amount of targets in this one, but it didn't look like it happened tonight. But couldn't blame you. He had 9 targets last week. I thought he would step up. And number 8, though, Dawson Knox in Tampa Bay. I think he's going to score some touchdowns in this one, at least one. But I don't think he'll catch more than 5 passes. And number 9, Pat Freiermuth almost had 2 touchdowns. Got knocked out of his hands by Harrison Bryant just a few minutes ago. The game ended right before I started recording this video. But that was an insane game. I thought the Steelers wouldn't have a chance when it was 29-0, but they came back and almost forced overtime. But Pat Freiermuth was a top 10 play. And number 10, though, Kyle Pitts at Carolina. I don't love his upside. He has been pretty touchdown dependent, and it hasn't been happening lately. So that's why I only have him at number 10. Don't trust him in a bad matchup. At number 11, though, Dalton Schultz at Washington. I think he'll have a decent amount of volume, but the touchdowns are kind of fluky, and there's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas. So that's why I have him outside the top 10. Jared Cook could step up with the COVID statuses of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams up in the air. If they miss time, he'll definitely crack my top 10, but sometimes Donald Parham vultures some red zone targets from him, so that's my only concern with Jared Cook. Logan Thomas is a bit banged up after last week, but if he suits up, he does have a decent floor. After this, though, it gets pretty risky. Zach Ertz is pretty touchdown dependent. Same goes for Noah Fant and Tyler Higbee, and sometimes they get forgotten. Evan Ingram is not a player I want to rely on, but you never know. Same goes for Gerald Everett, CJ Uzoma, and Austin Hooper, but that's really scraping the bottom of the barrel. You got to be really desperate to start any of those guys. But let's move on to defenses. At number 1, I love the Broncos this week. They take on the Detroit Lions at home, and they're going to benefit from the altitude and the home field advantage. The Lions won last week, but I don't think that they're going to be able to repeat that performance. They're not going to put up 20 points in this one. So I love the Broncos. They're my favorite play at defense this week. I love the Saints too. They play the Jets. The Jets are terrible, so Zach Wilson's going to throw some picks. The Chargers get a great matchup against Mike Glennon at home, and their run defense is looking much better last week, so they may have turned it around. If that's the case, then they could be a big threat in the playoffs. I love their defense this week. At number 4, though, I got the Titans versus Jacksonville, and they can easily shut them down, hold them to less than 10 points. They're going to have a good floor this week. Same goes for the Seahawks at Houston. Houston didn't put up anything on the Colts last week. The Seahawks will win this game and hold Houston to a low point total. The Packers have a great defense, and it looks like Jair Alexander is coming back healthy after missing extended time, so that's just an upgrade. They have one of the best teams in the NFL, and they are going to shut down the Bears on Sunday night. The Chiefs have also been lights out on defense lately, so they're a top 10 play versus Las Vegas. The Panthers have a great matchup against Atlanta. They could hold them to less than 20 points very easily. The Cowboys at Washington, also in a tough division rivalry game. They have some upside, but this is where it starts to get a little bit risky. I feel like in the second half they could lose a lot of fantasy points because they give up a lot of yardage in garbage time. The Ravens, I'm not fully convinced that they will shut down Nick Chubb, so that's why I have them at 10, but I do think they'll win the game. The Cardinals could show up, but it's against the Rams. I don't really want to rely on them. The Browns need to show up on defense in order to compete, so this ranking is more out of necessity. I do think they'll show up a little bit, get a few sacks and some turnovers, and then the Buccaneers may score on defense. There's a chance that happens. I really think they're going to limit the run game. Like, Zach Moss can't run the ball, neither can Devin Singletary or Matt Breida. Against the Bucs too, don't feel good about it, but it is Josh Allen, so don't want to put him in my top 10 either, so that's why I have him right here in this middle ground at 13. But to round out my top 20, I'll just rapid fire run through them. The Bengals at 14, the Falcons at 15, football team versus Dallas, 49ers at Cincinnati, Lions at Denver, Vikings versus Pittsburgh, and the Steelers at Minnesota round out my top 20. So that's going to finish up this video. Those are my quarterback, tight end, and defensive rankings for week 14. If you're looking for running back or wide receiver rankings, I'll have that available here. But if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel for more content, and let's try and lock up these playoff wins and get that championship. My name is Adam Riancho, and thank you for watching Nice and Blunt.